Welcome to the Liberated Investor Advantage podcast with your host, Doug Alden. In this podcast, we help you deal with and understand the uncertainties of investing and financial planning. Join us for this journey as your host, Doug Alden, teaches you how to move forward, no matter what life or the markets throw your way.
Hello and welcome to the Liberated Investor Advantage with Doug Alden. Today we're going to be talking about people at work versus money at work. Doug, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good, Eric, and thank you for asking. I'm excited about today's podcast because it's based off an application, a presentation that I do either individually or for groups. So it's totally key to our individual success as we move through our life cycles. We go from people at work to money at work. Mm-hmm. And as we do that, there's different stages. So, there's an accumulation stage. We're trying to raise our kids. We're trying to pay off mortgages. We're trying to do all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then we have a distribution phase where we're now, the kids are gone, hopefully. Not always true anymore. We are taking money away from what we have accumulated. And then finally, we're trying to do preservation and or legacy. So there's those three stages in people at work versus money at work.
I'm sorry, what was that? There's three stages?
Those are the three stages.
Okay.
Accumulation, distribution, and preservation.
All right.
But the role of wealth in retirement is pretty simple. It's to provide a stream of income. Remember, you've been getting paychecks by whatever source. If you own your own business, you kind of sweat it out. Sometimes your paychecks are big, sometimes they're small, i.e., what you and I go through as individual business owners.
Absolutely.
Or if you're working for a company that's fairly stable, again, that's getting to be a 50-50 anymore with the dynamics of our current economy and how fast changes are coming. You get a regular paycheck, you make contributions to your retirement, you try to save extra, you want to send your kid to college, you want to, buy a new car or take a vacation. Then you start the distribution stage. I've said this before, I'll say it all the time. When I talk to clients in pre-retirement or just beginning retirement, I said, it's broken down into about 3 decades if you're fortunate to live that long. First decade is kind of fun. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go look at that ugly boss and punch the clock and, watch the secretaries walk around and gossip about you. You're free to do what you want. You can sleep in late if you want to. You can go play golf, or you can take a trip with your wife, or you can you actually have some liberty.
Yep.
The second decade, things begin to slow down a little bit. Mm-hmm. I had a client once who told me, he said, I asked him, I had him for several years, and I got him just as he was heading into retirement. Between me and you and the lamppost, he didn't have enough money. Mm-hmm. So I always had to cushion my responses to him because he was having a great time. He'd come in his tennis outfit or this or that or whatever. And finally, after several years, I said his name, and I said, how's retirement going? And he said, well, retirement's good, Doug, just don't turn 70. He wasn't in the best of health, but as that clock moves forward and the calendar keeps flipping, your body changes. Mm-hmm. And so the second decade, you may have a few more appointments with doctors than you're used to.
Yeah.
And then the third decade, you're just trying to survive because you're in your 80s, maybe. Maybe you're in good health, maybe you're not. You see more doctors, you have risks there that we will mention. So that's the path that I'm trying to help people get to and through. Yeah. Now, some of the people, they're a little bit younger than I am, so I don't know if I'll make it or not, but if I have to hand them off, they're going to be in as best shape as I can get them.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to talk about this today, because there's certain roles that we have to play. There's certain money that goes different places. There's pressures on wealth that we want to talk about. There's just these other approaches to conventional retirement versus enhanced retirement. And I wanted to clarify that and define that. And then I want to make sure that there's some clear, different choices that the listener can make to make sure, or to at least get enlightened on some of the problems that they're going to face and some of the possibilities that might help make those problems less severe or even do away with. So
Yeah.
that's the goal today.
All right, sounds
and if
good.
if you want to find out about it, you just call me, or you go to my webpage and see I got a little scheduler there that you click on and make an appointment, and we talk about it on the phone, and we'll do a go-to meeting or a Zoom or whatever the current technology of the day is, to be able to at least introduce you to some of these concepts. So that's where I want to go, and I'm ready to rock and roll with it. So,
all right, fantastic. I've actually heard it termed a certain way for those 3 decades, and I don't know if you've probably heard this in all your time on the planet here, Doug, but I've heard it termed the go-go years, the slow-go years, and then the no-go years.
yeah, well, that's fairly accurate.
Yeah, and so
I had a very different model from my dad. I think I've told you about him before. After Mom died, I called him quite a bit. He wouldn't, if he answered the phone when Mom was still alive, I'd say, "Hi, this is Doug." "Oh, just a minute. Here's your mom."
Yeah, that's what my dad does.
So after that, he said, "Okay," and I talked to him, and pulling words out of Dad was really tough. And my son's just like him. But I called him one day and I said, "How's your golf game?" And he says, "Oh, I gave it up, Doug." "You gave up golf?" I didn't think I'd ever hear those words out of your mouth. No, I didn't quit golfing. I said, "Well, what happened?" He says, "I was walking up the 9th hole pulling my cart, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I was just really tired." I said, "Well, Dad, I think you've earned that. You're only 93 years old."
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
he walked 9 holes pulling a golf cart. So he started renting a cart. But other people are not that fortunate. I've had people in retirement that don't get the chance to travel as much as they want. There was a couple in Florida that I coached all the way through retirement to death, and she was not in good health at all, and all he wanted to do was sit on the couch and look at the Intercoastal. And so but they had their type of satisfaction in retirement, and they were very appreciative of me. Matter of fact, the son had a small beneficiary IRA inheritance, and I'm still in touch with him. So that's how long this can last. So let's talk about the role of money or wealth in retirement. The role of wealth in retirement is key. Obviously, it's got to provide an income stream, and that could be finite. Hopefully, it's risk-based, or it's not risk-based. You've done a good job of planning, and you have adequate income and adequate cash flows, and you probably would have a very difficult time outspending your assets. It must last forever.
Yeah.
In other words, you can't go to your birth certificate and change the date of birth and go back to work when you're in your 80s, because your body just won't be able to cope with that.
Yep.
You want to provide a legacy if possible. And here's the thing, Eric, that's so important. It's got to survive under a variety of contingencies.
Yep, absolutely.
One of the things I have said before, and I repeat myself with that phrase, but you have made money decisions all your life at different times, under different circumstances, with different people. My process, Liberated Investor Advantage, brings all that together. We bring your whole team together to make sure they're all working for you, your property and casualty agents, your estate planner, your wills, your trust, your accounting, even an investment advisor, life insurance agent, if they're on the scene, to make sure that all of our assets and all of our energy is pointed in my direction, i.e. my being client.
Yes.
So money will travel to 6 different places. Obviously, money travels to the government, taxes.
Yeah, that's not our favorite one.
Actually, I'm fairly pleased with taxes right now. And you say, "Oh my gosh, Doug, you're the only person I've ever met said that." But if you look at history, and this is what I tell people when they're pouring every extra dollar they can into their retirement accounts, 401ks and pensions, I said, we're in a relatively low tax environment from a historical point of view.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Do you know what the highest tax rate was at one time?
I've heard numbers like 70, 80%.
It was 92%.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, 92%. That's a pretty high rate.
A little bit, yeah.
I think when Ronald Reagan made a movie and he made $1 million and took home 100,000, I think that's when he became a Republican. But I'm not sure. I can go back and ask him.
Yeah.
But the other governments, you got the state governments, you got the local governments, you got at the gas pump you've got taxes, at the grocery store you got sales tax. You buy a shirt, it's listed for $19.99 and it comes back $26 because of state sales tax and city sales tax and all that sort of thing. Another place that it will go to is financial institutions. And by that I mean banks charge fees, investment advisors charge fees, mutual funds charge a fee. There's a lot of service fees there. So all of that is, again, in competition for your money. Now, the third person or entity that wants your money is corporations. I've included nursing homes in my notes, but there are other corporations. The advertisements for new cars is frightening. I mean, it's almost like riding in a capsule anymore, headed to the Mars.
Yeah.
So you get the need for a new car, planned obsolescence, cell phones.
Oh, Lord.
How many times have you bought a new cell phone?
Well, too many.
Every time.
And now I can't. I have to take out, a loan to get a cell phone
Right.
these days.
That's exactly right. That's called technological change.
Mm-hmm.
Planned obsolescence. The refrigerator breaks down. My wife and I have a chuckle every time we use our radar range. What do they call it? Microwave.
Mm-hmm.
We bought the house in 1992. It is built about 6 years prior to that, and the builder lived there for about 6 years. So 92, and that's 27, and 6 is 33.
Yep.
Guess what's still operating in our kitchen?
The nuker. That's right.
The nuker. And so, we just keep pushing the button. I said, I don't know how long it's going to last. The clock on the stove finally stopped, but the stove works really good, so why change it? So those are just some of the examples of what people are looking for and trying to take your money away.
Mm-hmm.
A fourth one is a surprise. It's other wealthy people.
Really?
Now you say, well, how can they do that? They're called estate sales. You got to settle the estate to pay the bills. And so we went to one. That was another funny story. We're in a bidding contest. Have you ever gone to an auction like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you get a number, and my wife is bidding like crazy. And I said, what are you bidding on? She wasn't close to me. And every time she raised her hand, what is she doing? So she ends up paying like $125 for a rocking chair that's older than she is. And I can't figure it out. And she, I just recover it and make it look nice. And we finally gave it away. But you can get carried away on auction sales.
Oh, yeah.
Charities are another place. Part of our estate is designated for some charities that we've been supporting for our entire marriage life. And then finally, we hope it goes to families.
Yeah.
Now, that's a lot of competition for your wealth. And I can tell you right now, you are massively outgunned. You got your money. Maybe it's in the millions. Maybe there's 10 figures in there, 7 figures. Well, 10 figures would be $1 billion, but they could have 7 or 8 figures in the millions, $10 million estate. Between the government, financial institutions, corporations, and other wealthy people, you're shooting a pop gun, and they're shooting bazookas at you. So you have to have a strategy. Now, some of the pressures that happen is another issue that comes to us when we cannot respond by going out and getting another job and making more money. We're retired. We've turned off the clock on the work year, the work life, and we're turned on the clock for the retirement life. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be talking about this a lot more, but I just want to mention it today, and that's called market risk. A lot of my clients are having their retirement accounts invested in stock markets. Mm-hmm. And probably the biggest, there's 2 big risks. One is a market decline, and that is compounded by taking a sizable distribution because you need income in a year the market declines.
Yep.
Now, just a couple nights ago, I'm on the board for the foundations at our church, and these people were worried about all that. I'm a newcomer, so I kind of kept my mouth shut for a while, which is not easy, especially when we're talking about my baby.
Yeah.
So what I convinced them to do is purely simple. Is I said, okay, each ministry you're devoting 4% of the corpus or the principal to each ministry that it's there for. In other words, people made specific donations. One is to keep a building and maintain a building. Another one is to have a guest speaker every year, and so on. There's several of them. I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we just take 2 years of what you're willing to distribute and put it in a reserve fund, a money market or a CD or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you have more flexibility and liberty to invest a little more aggressively with the balance. Because in a bad year, the next year you give away from the reserve fund. Well, I thought that was a great idea. And this is what we teach our clients to do. How can I generate during my accumulation years a reserve fund so that if I'm taking a sizable distribution from my retirement accounts, by the way, that are subject to tax law change, mm-hmm. How much is that going to impact the future going forward? And is there another source so I can have income to take it out of instead of taking it out of the portfolio? And I've got a great calculator that shows that, and you turn it on and you have your regular distributions, and when you have a down year, the next year you can postpone that and take the money from someplace else. That's what we're trying to generate and create for all these people when they come through our process. Of course, we have inflation. I have a question for you. I don't know if you've figured this out yet, but what would you rather have, Eric? A 60% tax rate with no inflation, zero inflation, mm-hmm. or a 0% tax rate with 3% inflation?
Yeah, I have no idea because number wise, I'm thinking 0% tax rate, 3% inflation sounds better than a 60% tax rate with zero inflation. But I think you're going to turn the tables on me, Doug.
It's equal. It's the same thing.
Is it really?
Yeah, comes out to the same amount. And I have a calculator that'll prove that. So, Anyway, so the people get flustered by that. And again, in my opinion, we're in a pretty low tax environment. When you figure out what your net tax rate is, you'd be shocked because you're thinking you're spending all this money for taxes, but then you incorporate all the deductions and the credits you get, and so it's not nearly. And it's a progressive, so it's not 24% on the first dollar, it's 24% on the last dollar, or whatever rate you max out at.
All right.
And then you have longevity and health risks as pressures on your wealth. You have a lack of savings. That's really bad. And that's what happened to this client. He said, last time I saw him was to distribute the final amount out of his retirement account because he had less in his retirement account than his monthly distribution. So we had to sign a special form. And also he outlived his insurance.
Wow.
He had some dated universal life or whatever it was. And it was a 20-year guarantee, and the guarantee, he lived longer than that. So he lost his insurance and he lost his retirement account. His wife was still pretty positive about it. She was okay. As a result, it was a tough meeting for me.
Yeah, I bet.
To run out of money, and he was having he had the choice of putting in necessary plumbing to fix his heart, but he would be living terrible life, or he could just live his life right now and let his heart do its natural thing. Natural thing. And of course, I think the last one, people don't think about this too much, but lawsuits. So those are just some of the pressures on our wealth. Unexpected events, lack of liquidity, outliving your money. If I had to ask people in their 40s and 50s about what their biggest concerns are right now, and I haven't done this as a survey, so I'm just guessing, but I'm thinking, which is my biggest concern personally, is running out of money.
Yeah.
My dad lived to be 96, and if you looked at a couple of pictures, you wouldn't be able to pick out the difference between the two of us. And so I'm thinking I got to prepare for a long life, and my wife's family lived into their late 80s.
Yeah.
But the solution is always more money. It's always more money or much more cash flow, and that's what really is paramount, because having more money could be very different than having more cash flow. I do a person A and a person B, and person A follows the traditional approach to retirement, and person B takes a little bit of a deviation from that. Person B does not accumulate as much, but he has much better cash flow and much more protection on his wealth, so that when he dies, a bunch of wheelbarrow full of money comes flying in to help the survivors.
Yeah, that's
Person
nice.
A, yeah, person A it is. Person A just has his retirement account. So, but that's a story for another day, or as a preacher would say, that's a sermon for another Sunday. So those are the pressures on our wealth, and it's kind of interesting to see how all that works out. One of the things we talk about is a conventional approach to retirement versus a enhanced retirement approach. And by doing the enhanced retirement approach, you have more choices, much more choices.
Mm-hmm.
By doing a conventional retirement approach, you have pretty typical. You've got your assets, you've got your expenses, which are discretionary, variable, or fixed, like payments to mortgages or cars or the electricity, variable, or when your grandson calls up and says, Grandpa, I need another $10,000 in my account for college. Well, too bad.
Yikes.
So sad. Your granddad, know.
Yep.
You take that money from a balanced portfolio and retirement plans, and then you might have home or real estate for future asset to draw on when the retirement plans and or the portfolios run out. Then you have, by law, your government plans and your pensions. Most people don't have pensions anymore.
True.
Most people have 401ks, defined contribution 401ks, which is what that is. So what you want to try to develop after, when I said you're trying to accumulate, then you distribute, and then you have a legacy. Sometimes you have a legacy for it's either growth or loss gone, balanced portfolios and retirement plans, and home, if anything's left. Government plans are gone, and any contractual agreements with your previous employers for pensions is gone. So that is the conventional approach. And I've seen this 1,000 times. As a matter of fact, the clients I'm meeting with tomorrow, that was their approach. Let's contribute as much as we can to our 401k, and let's buy the kind of insurance that just protects us. Let's maximize all those, pay off our mortgage early, save some money for maybe a 529 plan. In this particular case, the grandparents of his children were taking care of college education. It's really a nice benefit. So they were traditional, and we've kind of spread them out. We've been working together for 10 years, and I wanted to meet with them where we had some time. We could sit down and think about, okay, where we came from, where we are now, and where do we want to go. So that's the next meeting, and that's tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the enhanced retirement approach is a little bit different. You still have the discretionary expenses, the variable expenses, and the fixed expenses. You have a balanced portfolio and retirement plans. You have your home and real estate, which is the same as assets and income from the previous conventional retirement approach. You have government plans, pension plans, but you also have created other pockets of money. I've talked about this before. You have annuities maybe. You have life insurance that may have some cash value. Those are all by contract. So you have extra soldiers coming to the rescue for revenue.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You can draw down from your pensions. You can make withdrawals and loans from your life insurance. You can take income from annuities. When you are longer here on this planet. When you leave this planet, now for your legacy, you have the same growth or loss possibilities in your portfolios, the same balanced portfolio and retirement plans. Maybe you haven't outlived them, but you also have, first of all, those are non-guaranteed. We don't know if they're going to make it or not. But you also have the guarantee of life insurance and annuities to come to your rescue. What that does, Eric, is it gives clients so many more choices. We don't want to lock ourselves in to the conventional strategies. You can have limited investment options, possible tax explosion, increased government control, reduced or penalized accessibility, forced distributions, RMDs. I can't tell you how many times I talked to this one client just the other day, and she's been with me a long time. In fact, we buried her husband, and that was a sad event. And she wanted her husband back to do all this stuff, but I've been teaching her and helping her make all these decisions. So I called her up the other day, and I said, Mrs. Whatever, I said, you haven't taken your required minimum distribution from your IRA. Well, she says, why do I have to take it? I said, because it's law.
Required.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, that's the government. Why do they do that? And she's been taking these distributions. I mean, she's no spring chicken. So it was just cute on how it all, it was shock to her that she has to take this. And then when she turns around and does her taxes next year, she's going to call me and say, Doug, why do I have to pay all these taxes because of this distribution and how much you've done in our private accounts? And I said, well, I can turn off all those cash flows, but you seem to be enjoying them. Okay, fine. No, let me write the check. So you have lack of additional benefits, and nothing is self-completing. I mean, current employees working are one or two paychecks away from catastrophe.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have disability insurance or the probability of having some additional income in the event of a disability, or you have a premature death, then that causes stress on the families. Yeah. So those are the problems with the conventional strategies.
Doug, I know you don't like to focus on problems. I know you are a guy who is focused on solutions, and you just presented a lot of the problems with conventional strategies. You also spoke earlier you mentioned something about enhanced retirement. What does that look like compared to conventional?
Well, thanks for asking, Eric. And I know that I probably raised a lot of eyebrows to those that might be listening because they're all on conventional approaches. But that's what we want to talk about next time. That will be the topic of our conversation for our podcast later on this month. Okay. It's a very enlightened approach. And what you have to do, you have to go through some learning and have an open mind and be coachable, because I'm an upstream advisor and I go against a lot of the conventional wisdom. So we want to take some time and talk about that. That's why if you tune into our next podcast, you can get all those podcasts on my webpage, theliberatedinvestor.com, my email, doug@theliberatedinvestor.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Facebook, I don't do too much on Facebook, but on LinkedIn, I've got a lot of my podcasts showing up there. You'll just be able to connect with me, and if you want a personal one-on-one, you can do that too. Telephone number is 828-668-0665. Email doug@theliberatedinvestor.com.
Absolutely. I was just going to ask you, I was like, what if somebody doesn't want to wait to the next podcast, Doug? So if you don't want to wait to the next podcast to learn about the enhanced retirement and go through this presentation that Doug was talking about earlier, just give him a call. Absolutely. Doug, thank you so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to this next one, because I'm in the age range, I think, that I should be looking at what an enhanced retirement would look like compared to conventional. So I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Super. Can't wait.
I want to thank you for listening to the Liberated Investor Advantage podcast with Doug Alden. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Doug comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And this makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And I'm telling you right now, this is one that you want to share with your significant other. Listen to it together and say, hey, you know what? That sounds pretty good. We need to listen to that next one, or we just need to make an appointment with Doug. I think it'll be very beneficial. In fact, I know it will. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at the Liberated Investor Advantage, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Liberated Investor Advantage podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.